DW Africa Link.
Faith, peace, and politics. Many say this is a summary of Pope Leo XIV's visit to Africa. From Algeria to Cameroon to Angola and Equatorial Guinea, the message has been similar, promoting peace, speaking against tyranny and exploitation, and also highlighting the need for reconciliation.
The world is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants, yet is held together by a multitude of supportive brothers and sisters. They are the descendants of Abraham, as numerous as the stars in the sky and the grains of sand on the seashore. Peace is not something we must invent. It is something we must embrace by accepting our neighbor as our brother and as our sister.
Pope Leo spoke those words in Bamenda, a Cameroonian city still blighted by war and separatist violence. Fighters declared a temporal ceasefire during the Pope's visit. But will the pontiff's journey and his message have a lasting impact on the people and the leaders he met? This is Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter across Africa. And I am Adwoa Domena, your host for today.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Pope Leo XIV has been on the African continent since April 13th. The head of the Catholic Church has traveled to Algeria, to Cameroon, to Angola, and finally he's in Equatorial Guinea for the final lap of this visit. One of the surprise elements of his visit was going to Bamenda in Cameroon, where for nearly 10 years separatists and government armed forces have fought. Over 1 million people have been displaced, with more than 6,000 deaths recorded. Ahead of the Pope's visit, separatists announced a temporal ceasefire. Some young Cameroonians see this as a tentative positive step towards making some kind of reconciliation.
If the Pope has the capacity, to encourage and support an inclusive dialogue that focuses, on the core issues of the crisis, that is willing to bring on board all actors, no matter who they are, as long as they are an interest group, as long as they are part of the conflict, they should be brought on board, and that we should be able to enlarge the conversation, because with all the other dialogues we've had, the conversation has always been limited to the agenda that has been prescribed by the state.
Others marveled at the sudden urgency to achieve development and infrastructure goals.
There has been a surge in developmental projects recently, ever since the Pope's visit was announced to Cameroon. And I must tell you that some local officials describe it as a development miracle. And indeed, it is a development miracle, because projects that were lying without execution for years have suddenly come out of the suitcases and are very visible for each and every one of us to see. And so it is on a massive scale in the cities of Bamenda, Yaoundé, and Douala. But in Bamenda in particular, because it has been a conflict zone now for almost 10 years. And so many of these projects, particularly from the transportation sector, has really been on a surge. Well, this is what we Cameroonians wish, only that it is happening only at a time when the Pope is coming to Cameroon.
But what comes next after this visit? What is the net effect of Pope Leo's visit to Cameroon? Joining me for this discussion is Cameroonian Reverend Father Jude Thaddeus Langeh. He is a Claretian missionary in Rome. Also joining me is CW's Mefo Takambou. Welcome, both of you. Father, how would you describe the Pope's visit to Africa, first of all?
Thank you so much for adding me too. I would describe this visit as a pastoral, a prophetic, and also a strategic visit. The visit of a father to his children, a brother going among his brothers.
In terms of the messaging that he's been sharing across all these countries, what do you take out from it? Does it look like it's just a visit to foster peace, or he has a specific message?
The fact that this visit is not just a political visit, as many people on media may want to say it, there are so many things that have gone on in this visit or currently going on that we can really pick up, like picking fruits. It's a very simple but powerful message. The church stands close to the people. It's a visit for the call for peace. It's a visit that reminds leaders of their responsibility. It's a visit of a pastor walking with his people, trying to tell us that peace is not just presented as an idea, but it's an urgent task for societies and for leaders. That the church in Africa has to stand up in hope, close to the people, working with the realities of the people, and also giving hope to the world.
Thank you so much, Father. Mimi, let me come to you. How do you personally see this visit as well? Somebody who has lived in and reported on Cameroon for a very long time.
When he was coming, people were just saying that the Holy Father is visiting Africa, including Cameroon, where I come from. But they didn't see the undertone of the messages. I know that you and I would go deeper into, how it was interpreted in these countries. But we didn't see these strong political statements coming. We didn't see him reacting about slavery, about democracy, about corruption, really, speaking strongly about some of the things that have been affecting the African continent. So generally, I have the impression that the Pope's visit was spiritual, but also very, very political.
Thank you for that, Mimi. Reverend Jude, do you think the visit has been successful?
I want to say that the visit has been more than successful, and it continues to be a success because all what the Pope planned to do, he has been doing it. And I think what the people were expecting from the Pope, they are actually hearing it. And I just want to say the visit has been successful because it has been bearing a lot of fruits, both spiritual and moral fruits. I mean, it's just so wonderful.
In reality, do you think that this visit is having a long-lasting impact on Cameroon?
I want to say that the fruits of the papal visit are both temporal and long-lasting. They unfold in conscience, they unfold in culture, and they unfold in commitment over time. Remember, he asked 3 very pertinent questions in his very first speech in Cameroon. That speech was delivered in the presidential palace on the 15th of April. I just maintained some 3 questions. He made a history of the visits of other popes, quoted John Paul II, quoted Benedict XVI, who emphasized on the importance of reconciliation, justice, and peace. Then he asked these 3 questions. Where are we now? How has the word that was proclaimed to us borne fruits, and what remains to be done? We see a pope whose visit enters into the past, responds to the present, and projects to the future. So I will say that it's an ongoing process, and it's a long-lasting process which needs commitment and unfolding in our different consciences.
Interesting. Let's talk about the temporary impact, Mimi. We understand in Bamenda, for instance, one of the key areas which the visit was focused on, where we've had, Anglophone crisis for a long time, there was a temporal suspension of fighting. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, not fighting per se, but separatists who have been, putting in place policies to some sort of, ask for certain amends, press the government to carry out, or respect some of the rules that they have been putting in place for a very long time. They have been instituting ghost towns. They have been telling people not to come out, especially when an authority is visiting the region. Sometimes there will be attacks, against civilians and also military, particularly civilians who do not respect their rules and regulations that are in place, and also they are fighting members of the government and the military. They came out and said that there was going to be, freedom for everyone to come out and welcome the Pope, which was some sort of a relief for Catholics, for a lot of people who would have loved to see the Pope, firsthand or in person. So it was something quite different, because we didn't even see that during the election last year, when people were saying that it was an opportunity for people to go out and vote for the change that they wanted to see. But for the coming of the Pope, they actually saw that. So it's some sort of help to validate the suffering of the people in the Anglophone regions, and also reinforce that that need for dialogue and inclusion. The fact that separatists were able to speak the same language with the government, people were questioning what was the motive. And just to tell you, Adwoa, just as the Pope left, we are already hearing of attacks in these regions, but it didn't happen when the Pope visited. It's not like it's the first time, but like for the first time since the start of this year, the separatists and government forces or government officials were speaking the same language, which was that of coming together to welcome the Pope and to reinforce the message of peace.
It's very important that you mentioned that for a moment, it seemed that there was understanding, or it seemed that there was an agreement between government and separatist forces. And then right after the Pope leaves, we hear this coming up again. For you, how did discussions around the Anglophone crisis go as far as the Pope visit was concerned? When he got there, did he make any efforts at reconciliation? How was it like? Can you talk to us about that?
Well, there were a lot of, ramifications to the Pope's visit. He was talking about violence when the government is not fighting for peace. The burden is on the government to ensure that the country is at peace. And when jobs are not provided for young people, the country is in chaos. He talked about corruption. He talked about even Boko Haram and the insecurity in the English-speaking regions. He visited the region that has been in conflict for 10 years alone. He was not even accompanied by the president. So I think that actually puts moral pressure on those in power. But ultimately, any real solution will have to come from Cameroonians themselves, because we were also hearing from the Archbishop of Bamenda, Andrew Nkea, who doubles as president of the Cameroon's Episcopal Conference. He was saying that the visit that the real work is going to start after the visit of the Pope. There's hope that the church might take a more active role, that the church is going to be seeking, some sort of trying to, I think the Pope's visit some sort of empowered. I don't know if Father can also come in to tell us how he feels as someone who's worked in Cameroon as a clerician. But I think that he really empowered some of the prelates, the archbishops that are in Cameroon, who could not speak before, but you could see them really speaking up emotionally about this conflict in the Anglophone regions. So we are hoping that after the Pope now has come, made these statements and gone, people will now be able to see clearly that desire for peace in these regions is not only, for Cameroonians or citizens in the Anglophone regions, but is something that is global.
Thank you so much, Mimi. Reverend Father, Mimi makes a key point about empowerment. Perhaps that's a new angle to all of this visit, beyond just preaching peace message, beyond preaching about faith and all of that, that this visit is giving, voice to people who ordinarily would not have voiced out in a lot of instances. Do you agree that is what is happening here?
I totally agree. Bishop Andrew Nkea spoke, he spoke so emotionally that it moved us to tears, because the first empowerment I could see in the Pope's visit was the fact that Archbishop Andrew Nkea could stand up and say, this is the appointed time. You are visiting a soil of Bamenda that has drunk the blood of many of our children. I mean, he defined that problem. He dissected the problem. And he said, Bamenda will never forget that you visited them, prayed for them, and more especially, visited them when they needed you most. Another point of empowerment that I could see in that visit was the insistence of the Pope. The Pope spoke up and he said, this is the moment to change. This is the moment to transform the story of this country. And in his homily at the mass he had in Bamenda, he said, the time has come and it is today, not tomorrow. It is now, not in the future. So the
Right.
Pope empowered us by making us know that peace building, working to change the situation in Cameroon, is not something for the future. It is something now. It touched the traditional authorities. It touched the political authorities. He was so clear, so distinct, so simple, and so direct.
We're going to come to how that message has been received and going forward, whether it's going to cause change or not in Cameroon. But first of all, is it unusual that a pope would, talk about things as passionate as politics, and governance and all of this? Reverend, is it unusual?
No, it is not unusual because the Pope, first of all, as a religious leader and also as a political leader, the church speaks on matters of the society. In fact, the Catholic Church has what we call the Catholic social teachings, where the church makes a statement through its Pope and its leaders on societal affairs, political affairs, and all the like. This is not the first time. Because, even when Pope Benedict XVI came to Cameroon in 2009, he emphasized the importance of reconciliation, of justice, of peace, and also the moral responsibility of those in government. When Pope John Paul II came, I will talk about the second visit in 1995. He promulgated what we call Ecclesia in Africa, the church in Africa, where he insisted on the fact that the church in Africa must stand and must accept the fact that the society is in his hand. In every case, popes have always made statements in the society, be it political, be it social, but they have a very powerful say.
I just wanted to weigh in on the aspect of whether it's something that is strange. It's of course not strange. The Pope has recently been on the news reacting to the US-Iran conflict. But I think with the case of Cameroon, it took the officials by surprise because there's always that general impression that they think that someone like the Pope would not have a clue about what is happening in Cameroon, Like when he stood in front of the president himself and he was speaking, you could see the surprise on their faces. I'm sure if they knew the depth of his message, they would have done everything possible to stop Cameroonians from probably watching the live streaming that was going on. But the Pope came really prepared, very knowledgeable about everything that was happening in Cameroon. When he was in Yaoundé, he had the message that was, tailored to the people in Yaoundé and Cameroon in general. When he was in Bamenda, the message of peace and the dove that he sent to the sky and called for peace in Cameroon was so symbolic. When he was in Douala, the message was very, very clear that it was not just any ordinary visit, like just to come and visit. And he knew and understood the context of Cameroon politics.
Very interesting. And I'll stay on the point about the surprise element in the faces of the political powers, because I remember the messaging has not so been received very well by Donald Trump, for instance, when the Pope talks about certain things. In Cameroon, how has this message been interpreted by the political leadership, by the citizens, Father?
For me, just seeing the population that came out, Douala, it was estimated that we had 120,000 people. Just seeing the euphoria on the streets, seeing even the political leaders leaving their offices, being there with the Pope in all his public appearances. I want to say that was already a first reception of it. So they received it well, and we never had, I don't think we had some negative reactions or some anger from the political leaders coming upstage to criticize the Pope.
And realistically, they can literally just, come up and rebut what the Pope has said. But
I agree with you.
It is in the going forward. What next?
Yes.
Is there a visible change after
No.
these words have been spoken? How have they received it? That's the important thing for a lot of people.
No, I already agree with you about the fact that they can't do it, but Donald Trump was acting immediately. Just the fact that they received, Archbishop Nkea just gave one question in an interview, said, "What next?" So there is a time to digest this enough food the Pope has given us to chew. And I think in the coming days, we are going to see very clearly the effects of what next. But I just want to talk about that visit there and then. Had it been the Pope's message was not well received on the first day or on the second day, we could have seen a negative reaction maybe from the leaders. They didn't do that. And for me, that is what the political leaders should be thinking now. I know that where our leaders are now, they're asking, how can we implement immediately and in the long term what the Pope has given us?
Let me see if Mimi has the same idea. Mimi, do you think that the political leadership in Cameroon at the moment would change, or their actions would change significantly after this visit?
I like the fact that Father is just, looking generally at how things are going. But when you look at how Cameroonians reacted, they were feeling felt and heard and seen. His words on peace, justice, and struggles of young people, it really resonated. And at a time when there's been, skepticism, or some people asking whether anything was going to happen really, when the Pope visits, or if he was going to say anything at all. For most Cameroonians, they think that action should speak louder than words. The government has officially been welcoming. We have to be honest about that, and has presented the visit as a diplomatic success. However, it has not directly engaged with some of the most, critical aspect of the message of the Pope, which brings me to what you were asking, Adwoa, about what happens next. Is anything going to change at all? Now that the Pope has left, the responsibility is shifting back to Cameroonians, because we know the government is a government that has always been very silent. The Pope has delivered the message and has generated important conversations now in Cameroon. In fact, it is still making news. But change will depend on government action, pressure from civil society, and citizens demanding accountability. And as we are speaking now, Adwoa, some civil society actors like Dr. Simon Monzo have already started reigniting calls for the All Anglophone Conference. You remember that other Anglophone conferences have taken place, they have been announced, and we didn't even see any positive results.
Reverend, I was going to give you the title of a Pope.
Okay, no, plunge me.
Reverend, your final words. I just want to find out, historically, you've mentioned the visit of Pope Benedict, and a few others in Cameroon. Has there been history to a political change, a visible change that has happened after these visits? And what will be, your concluding remarks on the Pope's visit to Africa?
The messages given by popes, those messages were well received, and it strengthens the life of Cameroonians and the political and social and religious environment. So after the visit of Pope John Paul 2 times and the visit of Benedict, there have been a significant understanding between the church and the state. More religious freedom. The church could have say now in many things in the country. There was this signature of the common accord between the Vatican and the state of Cameroon. There have been better dialogue and better understanding between the church and the state, which is very, very good for the life of the people. Visits of Pope don't bring change automatically. They don't change political actions automatically. But what they do is that they change the environment. Their visits raise moral pressure and also increases international attention. I bet you all eyes are now set on Cameroon. We saw that temporary ceasefire. That was already a sign that international bodies are looking at Cameroon. But real change, I would say that depends on whether leaders are willing to act on that message or not. So everyone should know that the international community is not silent about Cameroon. The international community is more concerned about the situation of Cameroon. We have to rise up and work as one person for the good of the country.
Well, thank you very much for that. You just heard Reverend Father Jude Thaddeus Langeh. He is a Claretian missionary in Rome. You also heard DW's Mimi Mefo Neo. Mimi, thank you for your time as well.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
Cameroon remains one of the most politically complex countries in Central Africa. President Paul Biya has ruled since 1982, and his decades-long grip on power has shaped the country's political culture. Now, during his visit, Pope Leo chastised tyranny and the misuse of political authority at the expense of ordinary citizens. In doing so, he invariably reaffirmed the role of religion as a moral compass of society, as a voice that speaks for peace, justice, and conscience. The question, however, remains, what will truly change in Cameroon after this visit? Share your thoughts with us on our Facebook and TikTok pages at DW Africa. Listen to this podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Kai Neve. I am Adwoa Domena. Bye for now.
DW. Made for minds.